So again, I want to say good evening to the Capital District, and I legitimately cannot thank y'all enough for the opportunity to share tonight. Some ideas that I kind of believe will help your club membership growth efforts. I want to first of all thank Governor-elect Jen Wolf for calling me and asking me to do this, and I also want to thank John Morris for all his help that he's done this year and looking forward to next year. You guys are wonderful, and I'm looking forward to our time together tonight. Now, I have been to the Capital District, and from the Chesapeake Bay to the five rivers that feed into it, it's kind of like Mississippi, where I'm from, because you guys are known for your outdoors activities, your hunting, your fishing, your hiking, and I want to talk about that last one, the fishing. Um, Today, because whether you're going to be a novice at recruiting for your club or whether you're a bass pro, using the right bait is really essential to the success of your club strengthening effort, right? So in light of that topic, today, let's chat about using the right bait in making recruitment efforts count. Now, I don't know about you, but I grew up fishing on a bank, with my dad. It was some of those memories that I will never forget. As a young girl, when I was growing up, I remember those fishing days that we had, and this is going to be the next slide, Jen. One thing that I do remember about those fishing days is that my dad always had a plan. For example, when we planned for the night before, he kind of tell me about, what we were going to do, what general area we were going to go into, and kind of talk about what equipment we were going to use and all that. And, last but not least, he would always say, get a good night's sleep because we're going to get up early. So all that was very nostalgic. And I'm going to tell you, it was sweet times that I had with my dad since he's no longer here. But I do want to tell you, there was nothing fun about getting up that early, touching nasty, squirmy worms, or being in the sun all day that appealed to me. You might be thinking about that as you're thinking about recruiting and how you're not really excited and maybe a little concerned. But first things first, in order for your clubs to even think about fishing for members, you must, as a club, have the desire to actually go through the process. And I'm going to tell you, from reviewing your Facebook pages for your ACE tools that you completed and working on your profiles and also putting together your recruitment events and your list, I see that a great deal of desire and effort's been made. And I'm really excited to embark on this process with you. Let's go to the next slide. Not to mention the 50 people that we have on the call tonight, that says something. So are y'all ready? I mean, when we first think about growing our club, just like fishing, you must have a plan. Remember I shared with you earlier that, my dad kind of laid out the plan the night before? Well, as you probably have already realized, you're going to need a little more time than that. As many of you have been already working on the things that we mentioned, like the contact list, the recruitment list, and things like that for weeks now. And maybe some of us, like Jen, has been working on it for months. You can verify that putting together a plan takes time and it takes effort. You know that your goal is to grow your membership. But what does that really mean? I mean, for example, each fishing trip that we would go on with my dad, I knew because of the location that we were going to, what we were actually fishing for. So with this in mind, I also kind of figured out what lures we would have to use, how heavy the weights would be. Is it shallow water? Is it flowing water? I kind of knew exactly, because of where we were going, what kind of lures we're going to need, what I would need to have to be ready for that fishing trip. So when formulating a membership growth plan, you need to ask yourself some questions. You probably have asked yourself these questions already, but if not, these are things that we want to think about. Who are you looking to attract? What's your target goal number for your membership? I know some of us are thinking, dude, if we could just like get 1 or 2 members in our club, we're gonna be doing great, right? Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, if we came back with 2 fish after being gone all day, that was not success for us because we had 4 mouths to feed. So, splitting up those 2 pieces, those 2 fish are not gonna be a lot. So know what your target number is. Do you have the right equipment for the task? We talked about the lures earlier. So do you have the right equipment? How will we engage or invite the members to the club? Because that's in and of itself a process that you have to plan out. And finally, once we catch them, what's next? And I'm gonna tell you, hint, hint, we are not about catch and release in this endeavor, are we? So you can't recruit new members if you're not confident. I love this because it says, I don't go fishing, I go catching. That says something, right? That whole face, he's like all about it. Confidence comes with working your plan and using the resources available. Now, I provided a sheet that will accompany this presentation, and it has all the resources that you're going to need to be successful. Some of them you already know because you've been working them already, but it will definitely be helpful to you. And the first thing that can easily shake someone's confidence is talking to strangers. I mean, some of us don't really enjoy doing that. That's not a fun day for us if we have to go talk to somebody about, even if it's something that we love. We're not real excited about that, and it sets up some apprehension and a little bit of anxiety. So I want to share with you a little bit about some of the things that we need to do, or at least start thinking about, regarding talking to folks and building up our confidence. We have a ton of ways to talk to people, ton of methods, but all of those fall into really 3 categories. In-person contact, and that includes like visiting businesses or organizations and engaging individuals at an event, or just talking to random unscheduled encounters with folks about Kiwanis. Another method is online contact, and that includes engaging folks through social media or internet meetups or something of that nature. And then finally, but not least at all, is telecommunicating. And that's phone calls, text messages, and things of that nature. Now, each method requires specific skills. For example, my personality is best visible when I'm talking to people face to face. I don't know if you got that from my interaction earlier, but I'm kind of one of those face-to-face kind of people. In these instances, I get a chance to not only notice body language, I get to make contact through shaking hands, and I'm a hugger, so I'm one of those kind of people. And generally, I get a good read about how the interaction is progressing just from that interaction. However, there are other folks out there who feel more comfortable picking up the phone and calling individuals to engage them. They use things like a person's tone in their voice or the rate at which a person speaks to kind of gauge if that person is biting or not. But I will tell you, all methods are valuable in the fishing process. You just need to know how you can best utilize your skill set and let your team know that as well. So now we've kind of got a feel for where we are in the process. We're working on our plan. We're kind of figuring out where our skill set is and what's the best way for us to engage folks. But who are we fishing for? I mean, who are we looking to bring to our clubs? Now, this issue from Kiwanis International came out last year, but I'm gonna tell you the information is good for the next 20 years because it was wonderful stuff. And I encourage you to check it out if you haven't. Go back to your files. You can look on Kiwanis magazine and online and find this edition. Especially check out pages 18 and 19. They provide great tips on engaging potential members. But now as we're working our plan, we need to really determine who we're looking to attract to our club. First, I'm a huge fan of working smarter, not harder. So with that in mind, the first place to start is with our previous members. Now, it might be a good time to reach out to them. Just to kind of see if, their life situation has changed. They might have left a club because they've had time schedules, family commitments, what have you. This might be a good time to reach back out to them and find out if they're interested in getting back involved. If you haven't added those former members to your contact list, I recommend that you add them. Secondly, look at your current membership. Who isn't represented in your club? Now, the club roster analysis, and that's also on the resources guide sheet that I provide for you, can help you identify those professions that aren't in your club, but should be. Did your club use that to formulate your contact list? If you haven't, it's a great opportunity to do it. And thirdly, everybody wants young professionals in their club, right? Everybody wants young whippersnappers. I love saying that. They want them in their club. And that's not a bad thing to want young folks in your club. However, before you make that your club's target demographic, you really need to understand what young professionals are looking for from their membership. It may be a little bit different from what we're looking for in our membership. So in the resources guide, I've provided a young professionals toolkit that can kind of guide you through that process. Now, all in all, it's not enough to say that we want cheeks in the seats, like my priest says. You must be intentional about your target market. We at Kiwanis have found that the top professionals categories include the following. So I present this because this kind of helps me with a visual guide of what we're looking for and who we need to attract for our clubs. There are clearly some folks that aren't listed on here, like stay-at-home parents or homeschool associations, things of that nature. But typically in our clubs, the top 3 of our current membership include banking, finance, and insurance. We all know those Edward Jones and those State Farm agents. The education and training sector. So we got to make sure we've got school administrators or school teachers in our clubs, and our government and public administration sector. So if you don't have those folks in your club, if you don't have the city manager or your supervisor in your clubs, this is an opportunity to reach out to them. Our Kiwanis roster analysis can also help you keep track of these categories. So for example, if you lose one of your members that fell from that sector, that came from that sector, now you've got a good in-person sheet that can kind of help you guide on getting that sector back and fills in those gaps. So as you look at that list, think about your club and your contact list that you've already formulated. Which category is not represented in your club? Now, there's some categories that aren't in your community, right? I mean, you might not have, I don't know, science and technology folks in your community. But if you do, they are part of our top current categories for our membership. So try to get them in the club. Let's go to the next one. So it's all great to have the right folks, a list of the right people, but do we have the right equipment? Remember we talked earlier about fishing lures and all of that? Each club has a Facebook page, and I know that because I've been seeing the tons of emails coming through about y'all getting our KI staff to kind of help with leads and whatnot. That's awesome. We're assisting with that to help you get your potential members. Now, this lead generation tool that you're will start seeing on your Facebook page will help you with getting warm leads, I like to call them, because they've already reached out to the club. They're already indicated that they're interested by providing their contact information. So, but let's talk about how engaging those folks on social media and the appointment setting, because that's really what y'all want to talk about tonight. So let's dive into it. Let's go to the next slide. So there are some key factors to consider when making plans to engage potential members on Facebook. This actual sheet is on your resource guide, so you don't have to try to squint and figure out what it says. There's some things that are really important, though, when you're engaging folks on social media that may be a little bit different from engaging folks in person or via email or any of those other methods. First things first, quick response is critical on social media. Now, if I send someone an email, for example, I can go 3 days without hearing from them before I start getting concerned, right? Because, that's kind of, the email etiquette. People aren't expecting emails immediately, for the most part. Same thing with a phone call. If I leave someone a message, unless it's critical, I'd give them a couple of days to call me back. There's no problem there. Social media is a different animal. Quick response is critical. When an individual shows interest in your club's Facebook page by liking the page or post or sharing the content, you can't wait 3 days before you respond because they've forgotten that they did that. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on the phone and called somebody or text somebody and they were like, I did what? Koala? What did you say the name of the organization is? Because they've forgotten it. 3 days had passed. So the best results are gained when you respond definitely within 24 hours, preferably within 8 hours. I like to respond within the hour if time is available, just because it's fresh on their mind. They're probably still on Facebook when I reach back out to them. So that's easy engagement there. When you're engaging folks with social media, use Messenger or text message to respond. I mean, think about it. Even if the person puts their email address on the lead, or if they put their cell phone number on there, how often do they check their emails? I mean, I want to be retired like Beverly one day, and I don't know that I'm going to check emails every day. So even if they put their email address, because that's what's asked of them, I don't know that they're going to check that as quickly. So the best way to reach out to Facebook contacts and social media contacts is to reach out in the manner that they initially contacted you. That is the optimum. Facebook is not simply a way of acknowledging a person by saying thank you for liking your page or giving them a thumbs up or something like that. Remember, our job is to utilize social media to help us gain members, right? So if you're just letting them slide through the cracks by thanks for liking our page or giving them a thumbs up, that's not helping our membership growth. What we need to do is always have a call to action. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to give you a good real world example of what that looks like. So here's an example of Facebook engagement for a new club. So you can kind of see First of all, notice the timestamps. Obviously, Miss Rita is an early riser. I am not saying that you need to respond to that person in that amount of time, because I didn't respond for 2 hours, but she's an early riser. So there you go. But when we engage with those connections, look at, kind of read through the process. Obviously she reached out to us. She said, good morning, I'm interested in joining the group, and gives us a little bit of background about herself. All that's great. And so then when you reach out, acknowledge them, thank them, but remember that call to action. We'd like to meet with you and talk to you about, your interest in our club. Provide your contact information. If you have a club email address, this is a great place to put that. You don't necessarily have to put your personal email address. Feel free to put your club's email address, as long as someone's monitoring that. Secondly, as you do your call to action, make sure that if they can't meet the time that you offer them, because you do need to offer them a time, then try to give them an opportunity to give you a different time. So like she said, can I give you a call on Monday? Absolutely. Safe travels. Have a great weekend. So this is a good example of how to engage someone on social media. You're not going into a ton of details about your club. You're not going into a ton of details about Kiwanis even. Social media is about short, concise, but succinct, informative information. So utilize that. Now, let's go to our next slide. Okay, those are my dogs. I cannot deny those are my dogs. I think my mom just came to the house, so there's that. So we talked a little about social media. How about setting appointments? Because we just talked a little bit about setting appointments with social media, because in that call to action, you ask them, when can you meet? This is another way of doing it. So first, you need to make sure that you have those folks that want to be on the phone, right? I mean, remember we talked about earlier, I'm kind of an in-person kind of, gal. I like to talk to people in person. I can do both, but if this is your skill set, find the people in your club that want to talk to folks on the phone and aren't afraid to, make those connections. So once you get your group of individuals together, kind of set the tone. Remember, without appointments, May 13th and 14th is going to be very difficult, because we're going to be going to places that, they're not expecting us. They don't know we're coming. They might not have time. So setting appointments is really, really so vital to helping your club grow. But how many appointments do you need to have? Our standard rule is, if we can have 20 appointments, that would be awesome, because from 50 people on this call, 52 now, we should have enough people to see all those folks. But at a minimum, let's try to have at least 5 to 10 appointments per day. And then you'll have new members in your club in no time. Now, who are the knowledgeable folks, callers, about various industries that are represented that you're going to be calling? In other words, when you're setting appointments, remember I said work smarter, not harder? When you're setting appointments, look at the folks in your club that are going to be doing those appointments. Compare those with your contact list. If you've got insurance agents on your contact list and you've got a member of your club that sells insurance, hey, ding, 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 winner, winner, chicken dinner, that's a great person that will be able to make that connection with the insurance agent. Why? Because they speak the language. So if you can match those categories up, that is awesome. But that's not always you're not always able to do that, right? So one good thing to do is to interview Kiwanians who are. So for instance, I'm going to call her Miss Beverly because I've got her name right on my screen. Sorry, Miss Beverly. Um, let's just say she's going to call on hospital systems. Okay, maybe she didn't retire from the hospital. So that's an area that she may not know about. Well, if you've got a nurse or a doctor or a hospital administrator in your club, Miss Beverly needs to interview that person and kind of talk to them about, hey, I've got these folks to call. What are some of the things that they're going to ask? What are some of the objections you think they're going to give? Because I want to be knowledgeable when I have that conversation. So those are two great ways to reach out. But last and not least, if you don't have either one of those in place, wing it, right? Because you love Kiwanis, you want to support your community, you want to grow your club. So at the end of the day, you should be able to talk about asking folks to join your club, right? So I always say, fake it till you make it and go from there. But let's talk a little bit more about setting appointments, because it's not just that easy for some, right? Go to the next slide, please. So we have these folks on this contact list that we're recruiting, right? We have our folks in our club that are chomping at the bit to try to engage them. Okay, what do we say? What do we say? Remember we talked about confidence earlier? So, okay, what do we say to these folks? Now, I have provided a script. This is a screenshot of it, but you've actually got a link on your resources guide. And Jen's going to share that later. But before we start making appointments, there's a few things I want you to think about. First and foremost, if you're going to be making appointments via phone, find a quiet place to make those calls. I know that's easier said than done because I got these crazy dogs in the background making all this noise, but try to find a quiet place to make the calls. The last thing you want is to be on the phone and like, what? I can't hear you. So do that. Always have a notepad and a pen. I'm still old school and I like to write notes down. Know that you have your Google Sheets and you're going to transfer that information that you learn from the contact onto your Google Sheets. But initially, you might want to have a little pad there to take notes. And last but not least, these last two go together. I always say smile before you dial, because believe it or not, people hear that on the other end when you're making the phone call. So make sure you do that. I mean, you can't see my face right now, right? But, well, you can see the picture. But if I picked up the phone and called John, hey, John, I'm Regina from Kiwanis. How are you today? Do you think that sounds like I'm happy to make that phone call or not? I'm smiling when I'm dialing. And so that person on the other end is going to hear your enthusiasm. They don't even know what you're calling about, but for some reason it's infectious. And they're like, well, I don't know what she's calling about, but she's excited. So I want to be excited too. Yay. It is psychological. It works. Trust me. So do your homework though, before you pick the phone up. What do I mean by doing my homework? Have your Google Sheet ready. I know I said have your little notepad and your pen ready, and that's important too, but have your Google Sheet ready so you can go ahead and transfer that information. Because remember, your Google Sheets that you're going to be using is a live document. So you want to make sure you're updating it quickly. You don't want to wait to call all 10 people and then start putting your notes in. Start putting them in as you go. The sheet's going to also provide you with contact information about that potential member, but you may need to do a little more research if it just has their phone number and their address. I recommend searching for that business online. Find out what they do. I mean, some businesses, it's easy. If they're called ABC Engineering Firm, well, shoot, okay, they're an engineering firm, but having worked in the engineering industry for a long time before I came to Kiwanisphere, there's a ton of engineering disciplines out there. So knowing whether they are building bridges, repairing roads, or what have you is important. So find out kind of what they do and how active they are in the community. It's always great when you have a conversation with a potential member and you tell them, I know that you give scholarships to high school students who are in the STEM program. That's amazing. We're all about kids too in Kiwanis. You wouldn't know that information if you didn't find it on their community outreach page, though, on their website. So do some research about the organization. In keeping with doing some research, find out what their leadership structure is in their organization. For example, it's so much better when you call someone and ask for, may I speak to Bill in community relations, as opposed to, may I speak to someone in community relations? It sets a different mindset, right? So when you're doing your research, kind of find out what their business structure is and put that information in the notes section. And lastly, remember, you're not there to set the appointment, or you're not on the appointment setting call to tell them everything that you need to, that you know about Kiwanis, right? Your phone call to set an appointment should be less than 5 minutes, more along the line of 3 minutes, unless it takes them longer to transfer you between this person or that person. So your goal is not to tell them everything you know about Kiwanis or everything you know about your club. Your job is to share a little bit of information and set the appointment. For example, I know that Lynn Haven's club supports the cerebral palsy organization, adults with cerebral palsy. Well, you know, as you're talking to folks, you know, if one of the organizations that you're reaching out to helps folks with disabilities, here's a group match. You can mention those things. The beauty of the script, though, is it helps you kind of overcome objections, and it helps you kind of pivot to securing the appointment. Because I'm one of those where I can easily be like squirrel, you know, I can go off on a tangent about whatever the subject is not. That is a skill set of mine that I have honed over the years. But the appointment script really kind of helps me stay focused, and it helps you really to evolve verbiage regarding online appointments and things of that nature. So it really helps you in that effort. Now, let's talk a little bit about, now that we have the appointments, we've set the appointments, we've engaged all the people on Facebook, they're all excited. And now what do? Go to the next slide. Remember I said earlier in our fishing analogy, this is not a catch and release experience, y'all. Our goal is to meet with them, set the appointment, meet with them, and encourage them to join our clubs. We want new members, right? That's what this whole process is about. But we're gonna have to do a little work to ensure that we engage them. You know, new members probably don't know much about our organization outside of what you've told them. Statistically, only 50% know about Kiwanis that you're going to talk to. So this will be a good opportunity to really, you know, kind of get them familiar with the Kiwanis family, what we do. When you host your open house, and I think almost every club in Division 14 has one set up now, but if you don't, when you host the event, you know, make sure that the person that you invite, they feel welcome, and that they know that they've been missing this their whole lives. This is like the best thing next to sliced bread. Now, we can't just simply excite them, though. We're going to have to turn that excitement into engagement. So having committee chairs reach out to them personally, invite them to the committee, or, you know, help them engage in the club on some level, help on a service project or things of that nature. Plug them in early. That's the key, plug them in early. Another thing that's important, we want new members to realize that whoever brought that person into the club, the sponsor, we used to talk about that, back in the day. We don't really talk about it anymore. Sponsorship is important. Whoever brought this person into the club, that's like your baby. You got to love on that baby and make sure that baby grows and thrives, right? So make sure that you're checking in on your new member. If they miss a couple of meetings, check in with them, give them a call, invite them to coffee outside of the Kiwanis Club meeting or the service project, because we are really a family, and it's important that each of our new members feel valued and wanted. I've got a great example of one club that I know that does this really, really well. They actually have a membership class, like the membership class of 2022, spring 2022. And each of those classmates, they get together, they do a service project that club actually puts it in their budget for the new club members to have a service project. And they actually have a person from that new club, that new class, that is a member of their board of directors. So they get to always get new, and exciting information from those new members. So the club continues to be relevant. So put them to work, show them the ropes, and make sure that they get engaged. Now, last slide, please. Now, I know that we're ready to go catching our fish. We're ready to go get our new members, and we're super excited about that. But I want you to know that I am always here, always, always, always here to help with any questions that you have. Appointment setting is fun. I mean, I like talking to strangers, but everybody doesn't. And if they don't, it's okay. There's another job for you in this club strengthening effort. Just see where you can plug in, find your skill set, and then let's grow our membership.
Just wanted to thank you all for the big effort you put behind this. I think there's many of us that have the confidence to talk to people. It's involving a little bit of where you are in your life, how busy you are, all the time that it takes to do it. But I looked at your links just now. I've listened to the presentation, and you've given us the resources to do it. And it's all about execution. And as you know, that's the real hard part. But congratulations to the people that took the time to put this presentation together, to put the procedure and the way it should go. And I thank you for it.
Thank you so much, Gary. And like this boost, it's an event. It's a one-time event that we're doing for Division 14, but it's in the hope of it being a learning opportunity, a learning experience. So you'll take what you learn from this event and you'll do it on your own. And it'll be part of your club culture, and it'll be just something that could be casual and it could be done throughout the year. So we hope that'll be the case for everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Ro. Thank you for the presentation. It's great to see you, Bob Powers.
Anytime.
Thanks, everyone.
Y'all take it easy.
Good night.
Good night.